Thank you so much. So real quick, a little bit about myself. Matan-Paul Shetrit. I lead the developer product at Writer, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Um, Prior to this, I was the head of product at a company called A-Team. Spent a good amount of time at Brex, at Stripe, at Square, and Flexport. So a bunch of like fintech and marketplaces. Um, and today we'll dive deeper into AI and what does it actually mean to choose your AI solution, especially in the context of enterprise. So, as I'm sure you all know, 2023 happened, ChatGPT happened, and the world assumed that AI is going to get us all out of a job. Um, we heard things like work reinvented, 10x faster workflow, end of burnout, and so on and so forth. Um, in that was accompanied with a massive influx of capital that was allocated to AI companies, and so that was exciting. That was 2023. In reality, what we see in 2024, it's almost and these are all re recent headlines. It's almost like a reawakening. You know, basically saying Gen AI and AI is not delivering on the promise. It's overhyped. It's a bubble. And such. And I'm sure a lot of people on the call have experienced it themselves. This whiplash. We went from a place where you are the hero at the board if you bring an AI solution to dreading the idea of presenting to your board those 15 minutes update on how the AI project is going, mostly because of the cost and just like it's not delivering at the expected results. So why is that happening? And why is it so hard to get production grade or production ready Gen AI? So first and foremost, low accuracy. And this is not unique to AI. This is true also for ML and other tools of that sort. It's really easy to get to 75% accurate results, but to get into production level 90 plus percent, that's significantly harder and requires a lot of work. Many companies, many teams are able to spin up prototypes. And those prototypes are really exciting because they show the capability of AI. Um, but that's not enough to get into production. The next thing is adoption. So, you know, especially in enterprise, users know their job inside out. They've been doing it for years. Um, and they have a really high bar of what it takes to replace components of their workflow. Um, and for AI to come in and inject itself into this workflow, it needs to cross that high bar. So what we're seeing is adoption is really a big issue for these out-of-the-box solutions. So for example, if you can get 50% weekly utilization of Copilot, you're in the upper bracket of Copilot users globally. And that's insane if you think about it, given like what we're seeing, like the stats versus also the ROI that we're promised. Um, to top it off, enterprise or in general companies, there's a need for training for up leveling of the teams to be able to then use these tools. And also explaining the compelling vision around why are these tools coming in and what's the purpose of them and mitigating that fear within the organization of what the role of these tools are. And last, is low efficiency. Um, it's not surprise. Lack of adoption contributes here, but there are deeper technical issues. Engineers are spending too much time on inference and infrastructure problem. A lot of time code is not reusable. It's painstaking nature of stitching together all these like bespoke solutions. And it's really expensive, both to maintain these bespoke solutions as well as to maintain the data upkeep required to run these solutions at scale in your organization. Um, and the use cases so far in most companies don't justify those expenses. So as I mentioned, you come to the board to present progress and they see the budgetary line item and they freak out. So what have we been up to? Writer is about 4 years old. We, unlike other platforms, specialize in B2B enterprise. As you can see from some of the logos on the right, these are some of the largest companies in the US as well as in the world. Let's call it Global 2000. It was founded in 2020, headquarters in SF. Um, Over 100,000 users, over 200 customers. Um, and you can see some of the investors and so on. So this is just a snapshot of some of the logos um, we've been working with. So the biggest learning for us is that, building a truly great, scalable, accurate generative AI product requires more than just LLM. Like LLMs are obviously a key component here, but it's not enough. LLMs are incredibly powerful in their own right. They can generate great content, rich personalized experience, analyze text and data. But like any other technology, it's not enough. And there's the secondary element of the product that are required. So what does it mean from the emerging AI stack? So hopefully I convinced you that there's a problem here. So the way we're looking at it is, first and foremost, obviously you have the LLMs. On top of that, you have the RAG solution. Then you need to layer the governance and control output. So think about it, we call it guardrails. And last but not least is the dev tools. Now, in each one of these lines, let's call it, or buckets, Writer has taken a unique approach or differentiating approach. So in the LLMs are our own LLMs. It's the family of LLMs called Palmyra. We'll talk about it later. In the RAG section, our approach is not a vector database. We use knowledge graphs or graph-based RAG, which we were the first or in the leader in bringing this into market with enterprise. Guardrails, again, similar. We're not unique here in the sense that others have guardrails, but where we differentiate ourselves is that we make them accessible. You don't need a DevOps engineer every time you want to change something. So it's like built for the business user, and dev tools we'll talk about further down the line. So what does it mean to be full stack? So we have, the DIY stacks, and you have the various LLM providers, which we all know and love, which is OpenAI, Cohere, Mistral, and so on. You have the train and LLM, and then you have the RAG solutions. Right now, what happens with a lot of players is they go to the DIY stack and they stitch it together. So think about it as like a toolbox with many, many weird screwdrivers and hammers, and they need to go figure this out and duct tape it together. On the other extreme, you have the AI assistant, point of sale, and embedded AI capabilities, and you see the main players there. Where Writer positions itself, and it's unique, is as a platform that kind of like merges the two. And unlike the hyperscaler, which is, Azure, obviously it's Azure, Amazon is obviously Amazon, and Vertex is Google's solution, we're cloud agnostic. And this is critical because as you go into enterprise, they themselves are cloud agnostics and they're not necessarily tied to one provider. So there's a need to scale outside of that, like, oh, you only work on AWS or you only work on GCP and so on. So as we said, on one side you have the DIY, which is expensive, take time, you need to stitch things together. On the other side, you have point of sale solution. These are very narrow, specified applications, and they're built on top of mostly OpenAI models, but also like Anthropic and other foundational models. They are really, really fast, but hard to manage and govern. So if you think about an enterprise company at scale, no IT or CIO wants hundreds of these bespoke point of sale solutions running around their organization, having access to their data, having access to permission, like various permissions, and God knows if they even handle permissions correctly. This becomes like extremely unruly. So you get, as we mentioned, one extreme, the DIY, um, fast in the sense that you can access the LLMs, but really expensive to scale and build the right solution for you. On the other side, you have point of sale solutions that are targeted and pinpointed for a use case or some use cases. But again, really, they have another set of problem, which is you can't have hundreds of these and manage them at scale at the enterprise level. So you have these two extremes that are really, really difficult for the average CIO or IT department or CTO to manage at scale. So we took, as I mentioned, a different approach, and I would say it leans on like five pillars of what it means to get a working AI application in production, in scale, at a global 2000, as well as like other smaller companies as well. We have quite a bit of what we would call mid-market players in our portfolio. So, and this came from, trial and error and meeting and working with these clients. So first, the first piece is, demoing to your stakeholders and socializing what's possible. Um, What that means is confirming that writer's a good fit and which team might want to participate, provide budget. And that's like the basic product validation. Second, we sit with them and schedule what we call an AI workshop. So this is about helping them brainstorm, quantify, and stack rank potential use cases for the organization. Now, this is also really, really important because um, it is the step where we talk about the art of the possible. One of the best things and the worst things that happened to AI is ChatGPT, meaning it made like AI, like everyone knows about AI. I remember I got a call about a year ago from my mother asking me if I use this thing called ChatGPT, and I was laughing. I specifically live in SF, not far from OpenAI's office. So I was laughing. I was like, yes, I'm quite aware, Mom, what's ChatGPT. But if your mother knows what it means, you know that something is happening here. And that's why it's amazing. Why it's bad is because it narrowed and collapsed everyone's view into what AI is into chat. And what we're seeing in enterprise, especially and in general in the industry, is this chatification of AI. And AI can do much, much more, and Gen AI can do much, much more. So the second stage is that workshop is where we really start helping the customer step out of this chatification view. Um, the third step is once we know which team we wants to be involved and what's their top use cases, we work with them um, to build and plug them into specific templates that really show the ROI and the impact. This builds the business use case, the budget, and validation. In parallel, we start working with legal and security review to avoid delay, and that's true for any enterprise. And again, what you're starting to see here from stage one, two, three, and onwards is this is a partnership. It's not like a transaction in the sense that we sell and we leave and we forget. Like you need to stay with the customer, handhold, and really walk them through this like transition. This is a new technology that will fail if you don't do that like project management. Fourth, once the budget is available and confirmed, if there's any additional product validation, we do that. Um, and then we also help what it means um, to build that POC. Fifth and last is working through procurement. So all of these steps is what required, and this is our learning, and that's what we've seen is successful for you as you build your AI solutions to go and succeed in embedding your product or your solutions in the enterprise. Like just building a point of sale and forgetting about it, or just having a bunch of APIs and forgetting about it, will fail. So There have been two fundamental approaches to Gen AI in the enterprise, as we mentioned. So one is the DIY, um, and the other is that point of sale bucket of options. Um, this is a slide from A16, and some of you might have seen it, of you might have not. But this is what I would say the quote unquote average AI stack looks like if you work with a DIY solution. As you can see, it's non-trivial, and each one of these requires non-trivial amount of maintenance for the team um, to get this running in scale as well as just maintaining this. Um, so, like, so a lot of us, I imagine, are in the product world. This expands the scope of the work by your eng team. This is a distraction from your core competency, and this is a real problem. So yeah, so what we've seen and what we've done is, as I mentioned, that full stack solution is really build that multiple layers, the dev tool, and the interaction with the users to bring all these critical components that allow you to get the flexibility of a DIY solution with the speed and with the speed of point of sale, but maintaining that governance layer that is required in an enterprise company, as well as accompanying the success of the project. So a bunch of use cases, as I mentioned, it's more than just app. Um, you know, unlike it's more than just app, we don't use your data to train the models. You can connect your knowledge and your needs into the AI layer. You have your own guardrails that you can customize and fully control, meaning maintaining the voice and tone of the customer and of the brand and of the company. And finally, this integrates directly to your workflow. So build into your tool and use cases and where you can meet you where you want. There's two sets of really in enterprises, you think about it, of solutions, like interactive versus automated. So interactive could be some of what you already know and seen in the industry is like analyzing, generating content, sentiment analysis, interactive agents. They are all great. The other side is automated. So think about it. These are more running in the background as part of your workflow. So image analysis, communication personalization, data transformation, and audits. Um, and these are all needed to be covered by a platform that comes in and into those into these larger entities. Um, so as I mentioned, this is the full stack of what the way we found that works to sell into these logos, into these enterprises, and not just sell and stay there for a year, but sell, scale, and expand within these organizations. And I can't emphasize this enough, how the last piece here, which is AI program management, which is basically hand-holding through the change management, is probably one of the most critical components. So I've been in tech for a while, and I've sold to enterprise for a while as part of that. But I've never seen an area where that change management is needed as much as it is from AI. And I imagine if you ask people in the early days of cloud, they will basically tell you that this was very similar. Um, so as I mentioned, we build our own models. They're at the top of the Helm, Stanford Helm ranking. Um, we use our own graph-based RAG. You build your AI guardrails into the system. You have the AI Studio, which is the developer ecosystem to build tools as well as integrations. And lastly, we have that program management that walks you across. But that's great. But what have we done when it comes to the models is actually also somewhat differentiated. One of the things it became very clear to us as we grown and sold into enterprises is a generalist LLM is not enough. You know, obviously they want to make sure that you don't train on their data, that the data has there's zero retention on the information. Um, they to some extent they want to know what the data that it's trained on, um, and so on. But the approach we've taken is multi-layered here. Is a verticalized approach on top of a generalist model, and we'll get to that in a second, as well as open sourcing a lot of these models as a means to build trust within these organizations. So as of 2 weeks ago, in the verticalized approach, there's two new models that became public. One is Palmyra Finance. This is the first finance verticalized model out there. Um, and second is Palmyra Medical. That is not the first medical model out there, but it is the top ranking medical model out there currently, beating, you can see Palm 2. This specific benchmark for Palm 2 that was used by Palm 2 is a 5-shot versus a 1-shot for Palmyra Medical, and the other models there across various benchmarks. The reason we've done this is because as I mentioned, a general model is really, really good for certain things, but as you start talking to financial institutions, to healthcare providers, um, there's just a need for something more differentiated as well as specialized. The same way that you um, won't use or it takes time, for example, to bring a PM from B2C to healthcare to B2B healthcare. It also, and they require training, or maybe you won't even hire them and you look for someone with specialization and expertise. Similarly, using a model that's a generalist model in the world of medical or finance just does not give you the results you need to get to that 90% accuracy we started with, to really drive change and adoption within the enterprises. Um, then lastly, AI Studio, that's our suite of offering that allows you to actually build these against those APIs. One thing that we've seen as you go up market and talk to larger and larger enterprises, they want visibility as well as control with their tooling. What does that mean in practice is they want to be able to interact with the underlying foundational models as well as foundational building blocks of the platform and pick and choose what they use. Um, the approach we've taken here is actually slightly different. It's not just about exporting APIs, as you see on one side, and that gives you, very similar to other foundational model players out there. We also taken a no-code approach, and we'll talk about framework in a second. The no-code approach, essentially, the thinking there is how do we allow users who are not, or I would say savvy, but not technical or developers, to also be part of the AI building process. So how do we bring together the business who has that deep domain expertise and engineering to the table so they can build the right AI solution for the organization? And we've seen that this works quite well because historically what has been happening with AI is you build a solution and you throw it over the fence and you hope someone catches it on the other side. Writer Framework specifically, this thing mentioned in the middle, is an open source solution that has no code in the front end and Python in the back end. The idea there is how do you empower users in the organization to build internal AI applications very quickly? And we have a demo later here, but I'll show a quick brief demo of what, for example, is possible to build with this tool. So I want to leave time for questions, and then if we have enough time, I'll do a quick demo of the framework. But yeah.
Awesome. This is Paolo from Reforge. I'm looking at the Q&A section, and I'm sorting by most upvotes. And I'll start with the first question, Matan. Are there any compliance/security frameworks or standards that are specific to AI? Can you talk about learnings from building for clients in highly regulated sectors?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'll start with and I'm not avoiding. So first and foremost, there's the new AI regulation in the EU. And I say the new is because it's coming into effect as we speak. So I'm sure there will be a lot of learning. So if we have this conversation again in a couple of months, I'll have smarter things to say. But that's, I would say, the big elephant in the room that we're waiting to see its impact uh, holistically. When it comes to other frameworks in highly regulated industries, so you have the classic PCI, ISO, HIPAA, and so on, especially in healthcare and finance. The big, I would say, I don't know if the learning, but the big concern of clients is that you don't use their data to train your models. You don't retain the data. Um, and also, one thing that we do is allow you to do single tenant and multi-tenant deployment. So if you think about the, let's say, a large investment bank, like they want to control everything end to end. So then it becomes really a question of how do you give them that control and in like encapsulated secure environment. And similar to like, a customer like you saw this on their logos, UHC or CVS or large like pharmaceuticals or medical providers. So this again is another example of why the models are not enough, but the act of deployment and how do you deploy and how do you handle this information becomes to some extent significantly more important than the core product itself.
All right, we've got another highly upvoted question here. How do you measure accuracy on content generated? For example, a chatbot connected to an LLM that offers customer support answers begins to give wrong answers that seem correct. How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And in the demo, if we'll get to it, I'll show it also. So I think there's a couple of things here. There's the common pattern, which is, you allow a user to vote up, vote down the answers. And that's like, we use the information alongside the customer to improve whether it's the prompts or identifying if there's like underlying issues. Uh, the other thing that we've done specifically for our RAG solution is we show the thought process as well as the supporting documentation as a means to provide um, um, trust. One of the things that we hear a lot is that when you send like this question to the ether and get an answer, you want to be sure that you can build the actual trust with what's coming back, and it's not just some like false prophet kind of thing, false oracle. So what we've done is as you ask the question, we then show you the breakdown to like the subqueries that the model is asking, as well as the supporting documentation, as well as for each subquery the answer that it gave, and then the overall answer that you got. So you think about it as almost like you reading a paper, and then the paper has like the references that say, okay, this is the answer, this is the supporting documentation, and within the supporting documentation, here's the snippets that we've used to build that answer. Now, is this perfect? No, and there's still a lot more to be done there, but I can tell you that from talking to our customers, that really alleviated a lot of the concerns around like hallucination when it comes to like support. And then I say a RAG solution because this could be PDF, it could be internal documentation for your support team, it could be external documentation, it could be a combination of those things. So it gives you those references, and then either a support agent internally can get more trust in the answer because they say, okay, this is backed by the following docs. And or an external customer can see, oh, this is legitimate, and here are the supporting documentation of where the answer is coming from. And if I want, I can go to the source material.
All right, we've got another question here. What resources do you need to build an AI-driven company? For example, we have use cases AI would be great for, but only 1 to 2 ML engineers, and it's hard to execute. This person thinks we might need ML engineers, infrastructure GPUs, ML ops, labeling. What would be a comprehensive setup?
Just to make sure I understand the question is, are you asking what would it take to build a company like AI in a company that's not an AI company but wants to use AI as part of the product? Is that the question?
Building an AI-driven company. I believe
Yeah,
your interpretation is correct.
yeah. So let's start with the obvious problem. GPUs are expensive. Um, they're very expensive. If you like go around the market right now, you see that there's a lot of AI companies that raised a lot of money, and now they're looking to rent out their GPUs because they're also burning a lot of cash for holding them and not having the training or what they need to do with them. So in theory, you can get some bargains in the market right now, but it is expensive and it requires a different skill set than than um than like I would say a regular engineering product organization. I think this is where companies like us, as well as others, to be clear, provide a lot of value, is because you're still getting the AI piece, while focusing on your core competency. So, for example, if you're a B2C or a healthcare startup or finance or fintech startup, you still work on the fintech part, on the core product, on what the customer wants, and AI is an element you bring in um, as part of building it on top of, let's say, a layer of APIs or platforms, whether it's us or other players out there. I think, realistically speaking, in bringing this at this point fully into like in-house to the company is probably something I would not necessarily. It's definitely something I would not do. For various reasons. You hear this a lot. People think that they need to fine-tune their own models. I think we as writer, I as Matan, think that's a waste of time. I think fine-tuned models do not show the performance that people claim compared to like using a proper RAG solution with an existing model. On top of that, cleaning your own data and tagging it properly for a fine tune, it's actually a really, really intensive both labor as well as dollar process. Um, then running like let's say you take an open source model and running it on a separate GPU infra, again, that's a cost that you're incurring. Where I think there is room for a lot of in-housing is bringing the skill set, pure engineering org, around what it takes to build great products that embed AI in them, whether it's through prompting or through other techniques that can be used on existing platforms, again, or APIs. So I know that's like not a concrete answer. You need three designers and two ML engineers, but I would say that to me seems more viable. Also, the industry is really like in flux and moving very, very fast. So I would actually wait until things stabilize to make that decision. There's a lot of offerings out there that allow you to go very, very far while controlling a lot of the experience. And I would just like use those solutions versus try to like build something in-house. The costs involved with it are just way too high.
All right, we have time for a few more questions. Folks, remember to upvote questions if you want to hear from Matan. Next question for you is, have you seen any use cases not pass the threshold when plugged into your business case templates? What learnings did you have from that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have clients that have like hundreds of apps deployed, and we have clients that don't. We have clients that, worked on building an app and it never made it into production, even though others did. So I think the learning there is actually a couple of folds. Having a quote unquote executive sponsor is absolutely critical in the enterprise. Um, because there is pushback, not just pushback as in like using vendor X or vendor Y, but there's legitimate fear in these organizations by people to deploy these applications. Fear is in like not that AGI is going to kill us all, fear that like it will impact their role and their jobs. I'll give you an example for a story. I was traveling for work last week and I met one of our customers and he said, we were talking about what it would take to expand on the offering, and this is a very large institution. And he said, honestly, Matan, I think until next late this year, there's no opportunity for that. You have a core use case that if you do well in, which you so far looks very promising, then the sky is the limit. But the issue here is all other use cases, at least from the department you've entered through, would require budgetary concessions, which would mean headcount, basically firing people to free up the headcount, and no manage firing the people to free up the budget, sorry, to give that budget to AI solution. And no manager right now within the organization will do that because there are two reasons. A, ego. B, they're afraid. They don't know if the technology would work. So asking them to fire someone that know that works, even if it's not the ideal solution, is not realistic. So there is a lot of trust building that needs to happen in these organizations. And again, like our champion thinks that we can deliver, and he would love for us to be in more use cases, but he said, there's no way my managers are going to let's say they have 3 people that are doing X, they're not going to cut the headcount by 30% for a promise of something that may or may not work.
All right. The audience has spoken. The last big question from folks is, can we see the demo?
So what I'm going to show, I'm going to do something really quick, is I'm going to show a writer framework. If you go to Writer and sign up to AI Studio, you can see the other developer instrumentation. But the reason I want to show framework is because it starts stepping away from this concept of pure chat. So what we have here is this was built on Writer Framework, as I mentioned. These are drag and drop components on the front end, full Python backing on the back end. This is fully open source. You don't have to use Writer for this. You also don't have to use AI. The fact that Writer backs it naturally creates, I would say, a smoother, tighter integration with the Writer models, but nothing is stopping you from using any of the other foundational shops out there to do this. Also, this is using our new Palmyra Fin. So this is the Palmyra finance model that was recently launched. And what we're seeing here is, I spent a good amount of time in my career before tech in finance. You're seeing kind of like a home screen of a financial analyst. So you're plugging in the ticker, and then we're pulling in some news about, in this case, it's Apple, the stock price over time. You can play with that. All of these components come out of the box. And that's basically it. It's almost like a mini or dumbed down Bloomberg. Where it starts becoming interesting is this little box up here. So once I click Analyze Trends, what's essentially happening is everything you're seeing on this screen gets dumped into the LLM. And unlike, I would say, generalist LLMs, the finance LLM is fine-tuned and trained on financial concepts like time series analysis, risk analysis, financial concepts, and accounting concepts. And then it takes all this data and provides you an analysis of the trend of the stock. Another cool option is, let's restart the session here, is we're doing 10K. 10K, in this case, you have a 10K graph. It's connected to a bunch of graphs. Someone reduced the amount of files there, so I'm hoping this would work, but let's take a look. What is Apple's? Sorry. Yeah, so this is unfortunately not working because the demo is not working. That's the nature of live demo, but yeah, here we go. So what you're seeing here, it's analyzing the request, it's generating subqueries, and this is what I was mentioning about providing trust. So as it generates the subqueries, you'll be able to see, um, you'll be able to see, yeah, so this is failed because someone messed up the the KG, but basically what you're seeing is the questions as well as the files that it's pulling from as a means of adjusting to building the trust. Similarly, you can visualize income statements. So let's take the publicly available income statement information. And then gives you the risk and opportunities, conclusions. Now, this is a great question on the chat. Can you provide, does this provide any, so it really depends on the way you prompted. Can it provide insights? Yes. But where we are careful on these models is we don't provide investment advice. As you can imagine, we don't want to be in the business of providing investment advice, which could, have more cascading effects. This is not our business. This is a model that was built, and it provides you the insights based on financial concepts, but like it circumvents the idea of providing you financial advice. And on that note, something small, we had an offsite last week. That's why I was traveling, and one of our engineers tried to get the financial model to tell it how can it buy a house, and the model literally contoured itself and twisted and turned itself to avoid answering anything around investment advice, and that's intentional. On how long, what was the effort, is that this took a solution architect on our side about 20 hours to build alongside his actual core job. So a lot of these components are out of the box, and the underlying data is generated either by external APIs that bring them in, or through the APIs or through the LLMs themselves. The other thing is you can do a summarization of earning transcripts. So this pulls in information like your earning calls, summarizes them, and again, uses that both as summarization or through insights when it does trend analysis. This is just to show you how you can basically build an internal, and in theory, maybe external, tool relatively quickly for your teams, using models and stepping away from like the pure quote unquote chat experience. If you have any other questions, fortunately we're at time. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn. It's Matan-Paul Shetrit, and thank you so much.